And welcome to episode 211. I think I got that right, of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking at the nighttime sky. In this podcast, for anyone else who likes going out under the stars. I think Don pointed out that I may have said episode 110 the first time.
Yeah. We'll have to listen to that. I didn't catch that.
We couldn't figure out whether it was maybe I had Messier on the brain or he did. And but I very well could have. And I was saying I've had a bit of a nasal infection this week, and my nose was kind of plugged up. So it may have sounded like 110. I was looking at it when I read it, but I certainly have messed up the show numbering a few times anyway.
Well, when we've done it over 200 times, you're going to make the odd mistake. It happens. So, but I tell you, that was a great conversation with Don. So, I think most of our listeners know, we record both of these episodes back to back. One comes out Monday, one comes out Thursday. Yeah. I'm on such a high after talking to Don. It was such a great conversation. What I just said to you like 2 minutes ago, just before we pressed record, is I would love to move down to where Don lives and just hang out and go for coffee a couple times a week with him, because the conversation is just so fun. Yeah,
it's just so like all, these folks that have been doing this for so long, they're just such fascinating people, and all the stories that aren't even in, like, none of the, like, half of that stuff wasn't even in the show notes or anything that we made up. And that's all the gold, the stuff about, making his own eyepiece and the custom made, Coulter Optics 10-inch, all that kind of stuff. I just love hearing that stuff, because that's kind of where amateur astronomy lives, right? It's getting things customized to do what you want it to do. In his case, hunting comets and getting really wide fields of view, which I love really wide field telescopes and observing. And, he's doing it for a slightly different purpose than I am. But I just love that kind of observing and that kind of conversation. It's just so much fun to sit and listen to. And there was some pretty big pauses, I think, after he stopped talking, because we're just like listening, and then we're like, oh, we have to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. And comet discovery is something that I've always been interested in. And I mentioned real briefly on that episode with Don that I've done some limited reading on it. There's like, when I've researched, like, how do you discover a comet visually, there's really not a lot out there, on the internet. I think because A, there's not a lot of people doing it, and B, I just don't know if they've posted or if there's been a lot of discussion around it. So being able to find out from, I would say probably the most successful current day comet discoverer, visual comet discoverer, it was just such a privilege and a thrill to be able to listen to Don tell us about how he's done it throughout his entire life.
Yeah, just super neat, really nice guy, really friendly person. And when he does a lot for the amateur astronomy community. I thought he was, I kind of wanted to plumb that a bit more, but he's pretty humble about it. But he's done so many talks in so many different clubs, and I had reached out to him, originally, whenever it was 10 or 11 years ago, whenever it was. And he was so quick to respond and so generous in his time and putting up with the technological hiccups that we had back in those days, which were certainly more than what we've had recently. And then again, I thought, he hadn't put out his shingle as much recently, but I knew he was doing the podcast, and I had reached out to him again, and just so quick and gracious in taking us up on our request to come on the show. And then we did have a few challenges with the sound, I think, all around, and then he was so nice to offer again to come on the show a second time and to chat. And I mean, as well, like, I think we got through about half the notes again. Like like you said, you could go and hang out and have a coffee with Don a few times a week and just do that, infinitely, and
totally,
like that's the kind of person he is, just to sit down and have a conversation. Super cool.
Yeah, I had like honestly, I had thought about 10, maybe 15 minutes had passed, and I checked the timer, and we were already past 35 minutes. I couldn't believe it. It went by far too fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a wonderful conversation. If anybody listening right now has not listened to Dawn's podcast, Looking Up with Dawn, check it out. It's one of the best visual astronomy podcasts out there. Just there's no question. It's really, really good.
For sure. I mean, it's very different than our podcast. Just, like a lot of the other people that we've had on and collaborated with on episodes in the past. It's kind of fascinating the different approach that everybody takes. Like, I think for us, this is what works well. But I know for Don in the previous episode, he talked about really preparing a lot of notes and having more of like his in some ways, like it sounds like this. It's very polished, and you're just gonna get a different, a different experience when you listen to his podcast than when you listen to ours. And I love it. It's great to listen to because it just is so different from what we do. So I think that people will enjoy that. You're not going to hear like the same type of thing. It's going to be from a different person with a completely different perspective, and somebody who probably has more experience than both you and I combined.
Oh yeah, it's not probably. It's 100% true.
100%. Yeah, I was thinking because he was talking about something there, and I was like, I think I was alive then, kind of thing. Like I wasn't even in elementary school yet, but when he was doing some of this stuff. Anyway, good stuff. But how was your week? How was your observing week?
Pretty good. I had 2 sessions actually. I know the notes that I quickly entered this morning says 1 observing session, but this morning I added a second one. So
Ooh.
yeah, it was clear enough this morning for a brief period of time I was able to get the solar telescopes out. So both of my sessions were solar observing this week.
Oh, I was going to say, I was really confused by that because
how is that even possible?
Well, I got up yesterday and I observed a little bit because it was clear enough. And then this morning I got up and I actually went out for a short walk because there was no astronomy happening, but it was clearing off when I got back and the sun was up. But I was like, what are you talking about? Like it was clearing from your direction, but it wasn't going to be that clear. But you were looking at the 1 star.
Yeah. So yesterday and today were solar observing sessions. I think Friday night we could have done some nighttime observing, but I was completely exhausted from my work week. It had taken a toll, and I had no energy for astronomy Friday night. But Saturday and then this morning here, so that would be Sunday, just some great views of the sun again. It is getting so active. So, for anybody that has the right filters or the right like hydrogen alpha telescope to take a look at the sun, I hope you're doing that because there's a lot to see right now. If you don't have any of that stuff, I really recommend getting like a white light filter. They're fairly inexpensive, compared to everything else in this hobby. And it will allow you to see the sunspots, some granulation, and like the detail in and amongst the sunspots. And really, I'll sum up both of my sessions into one because they were both quite similar. There's 3 different sunspot regions that I saw. One is quite small, and it appeared that it was just like one sunspot by itself. And it was in the northern hemisphere. There's a grouping of about, I think it was 3 or 4 spots. I think it might be classified as one.
Yeah, region. I'm looking at them. Yeah, there's 3. Yeah, I'm looking at 2978, 2981.
Yeah. Is that more around the equatorial?
Yeah. I'm just looking at the Space Weather Live right now, and in fact, Shane, I'm almost thinking you should leave and go look now because it looks like there's this big arc coming off on the limb. It looks pretty good on the SOHO images.
Yeah. Well, then I'll just quickly finish up with the sunspots.
Shane's like running out the door.
Yeah, I gotta go. There's another region of sunspots that was near, I guess it would be the eastern limb, closer to the equatorial band, I guess.
Yeah, I think this must be the one. Yeah.
So anyway, some cool sunspots to take a look at. Switching over to the hydrogen alpha views, again, there's probably about 3 or 4, maybe 5 filaments. So these are the dark lines on the surface of the sun. What's interesting about those, and I probably should have mentioned this last week when I was giving my solar observing report, the filament. So along the limb or the edge of the sun, there's prominences that, are like, the sun's ejecting matter, or they're very dynamic. A filament is a prominence, but it's just, you're looking kind of at the top of it. So it's just another interesting observation of the sun, or features on the sun. So lots of filaments were visible. Again, multiple ejection prominences along the limb, although most of them were quite small and not full of a ton of detail. But there is one this morning that was on the south that was like, it was almost like, two bands of ejection that were sort of twisting together. It looked phenomenal, and it was quite large. I assume that's probably what you're seeing on the solar.
Yeah, I think that sounds like it. Yeah, that must have been phenomenal to see.
Yeah, it was really cool this morning. So I definitely, my practice usually on the weekends, Chris, is I leave the solar telescopes just out on the patio, and they just sit there all day. And then as I'm doing things in and around the house, I'll just pop the caps off, have a quick look for 5 minutes or so, cap it back up, go do some more stuff around the yard, come back in a half an hour, have another view. That's how I like to do my solar observing. Now, if there's something that looks like it is evolving at a fairly fast rate, I will certainly sit down and spend as much time at the eyepiece as I can to observe the evolution. But more often than not, the solar things to observe take a little more time to evolve. So it's kind of neat just to see it happen throughout the day with some sort of frequent check-ins. So anyway, that's been my observing this week. 2 really interesting solar sessions. I plan on doing a lot more of that as our temperatures are improving. And then just some other quick gear notes here, Chris. I purchased and received a 28 millimeter Takahashi Urfel. It's a modern eyepiece. They've been making it for a little while, but it's one of the eyepieces that they just recently stopped producing. So I've always been kind of intrigued by this eyepiece because it's a 60-degree eyepiece. It is exceptionally light. It's an 1.25 inch barrel with a pretty good eye relief. Now the knock on it is that it's a little soft at the edges. So, I want to play around with that and just see how it works for me. But I'm always interested in some lighter weight eyepiece options rather than like the 24 millimeter Panoptic is amazing, but it is a little heavier, and I'm curious to see how this performs. And then the other thing is I finally ordered my Burlap Tripod, and I settled on the Uni 28, and I got the double clamps, the tray, with also the spreader that goes in there too. So that should arrive this week, I hope. At least all indications are pointing towards that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. How was your week, Chris?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited for you to get the Burlap Uni. I think that's the way to go. I had bought the what is it?
The report.
But I just bought the report. Yeah. But I'll tell you, the report was a little bit lighter weight than what I had hoped. Now it's still really good because I've got lots of small telescopes, and having a really awesome tripod with a tray to use with my small telescopes will get lots of use. It's seen lots of use, so it definitely has a place. But I think that at some point in the future, I'd also like to get the Uni 28 as well. So I'm really curious to see what that's like. I think that'll just about be a perfect tripod.
I think so too. I was debating between the Uni 18 and the Uni 28. The only real difference is the Uni 28 goes a little taller. It might also be a little longer when completely compacted. I can't quite remember, but I just, the way you and I observe, a little extra height is always appreciated. So whether it's, some sessions we're standing, so you definitely want the height. But even when you're sitting, sometimes with longer tubes, if it's a longer focal length telescope, having a little extra height is nice as well. So I decided to just get the bigger one, and yeah, I'm super excited to see how it will work. I think it'll be awesome.
Yeah, you're a taller person anyway. I think that's a good idea. And kind of the thing that I'm really curious to see is, so when I ordered my report, it was way lighter and just a tiny bit smaller than I had thought.
Oh, okay.
It would be, and that's fine, because I was on the fence about what tripod to get, and I had thought about getting like a carbon fiber tripod or something like that, which would be great, but definitely much more expensive. But the neat thing about the report that I bought is that it is so small and lightweight. I think it's maybe like a pound more than the carbon fiber would have been anyway. And then I added a carbon fiber pier to mine. So I think I ended up with the best of both worlds and 40-pound capacity and that sort of thing. So it's good and stable and decent enough with the 100 millimeter. But yeah, I think with your Uni 28, I think that's going to be a great setup with your mounts and what you have. Excited to see that.
Yeah, I think it'll handle the 4-inch Teleview Genesis SDF quite well, which is a fairly heavy 4-inch. And then my 120 Skywatcher ED, which is much longer. Again, I don't think there'll be any issue on that tripod. Yeah, so it'll be great for me. Yeah,
I think that's going to be great. I did get out yesterday morning. Took a look with the binoculars at Venus, Saturn, and Mars. I kind of had hoped to get them all the same field of view, but they were spread out a little bit more than I thought. I was using my binoculars that have a slightly smaller field of view. I think these binoculars have like maybe not quite a 6-degree field, but anyway, so I had to pan around a little bit, and I did see them. Yeah, it was kind of neat. Phil had been asking why I don't observe more in my yard. My yard is horribly light polluted. I've kind of got a tree planted in the past few years, and kind of things arranged in such a way that I do have the darkest spot that I can get, but there's a lot of lights around where I'm at, but that essentially almost eliminates any real deep sky observing. But for planets, if a planet is up and it's going to be high enough to observe, I can get them, like even these planets at dawn. I can see them even from inside my yard where I'm trying to block some of the brighter lights that are nearby. So, but yeah, unless the planets are up and worth looking at, there's no point in me setting up in the yard.
Yeah, yeah, that can be a little challenging. There's always double stars, my friend, but just to poke you a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's not it's not how I observe. And as well, like we had so much snow and ice that only yesterday morning was the first time that you could walk into the yard. You know, I still have 2 drifts that are about 1 meter deep. They just don't really interfere with where I'm going now. So I can get in there and actually walk around. So the other thing I was going to mention before I forget is I was talking with Alistair Ling about unrelated topics, and he mentioned this business with Comet 03 Pan Stars, and looking forward to it putting on a show. He said that they're saying next month, but then he mentioned to me end of this month. So if people are looking for a comet, check out 03 Pan Stars in your software. And then Sky and Telescope has a good article on comets to view in 2022. It's one of the ones they mention. And the talk is maybe 6th magnitude by the end of this month when we get to that new moon period towards the end of the month. 6th magnitude comet would be pretty exciting because that's flirting with naked eye visibility.
Yeah, so I'm on the aerith.net website that we use frequently for comet notifications or trying to get an understanding of bright comets, and it's listed here for May, looks like the start of May potentially. What do we have? Yeah, 03 Pan Stars, magnitude 5 in the evening, maybe shifting to a magnitude 7 at midnight and 6 in the morning. Interesting. So yeah, definitely bright. Wow, this is exciting.
Yeah, could be. I mean, comets are unpredictable, and it's moving across Perseus and Camelopardalis. So that is an area that it's well placed for us northern hemispheric observers.
Yeah, so this is going to brighten very quickly by the looks of things. Actually, so the magnitude it looks like that's probably around January, February. Yeah, it was quite dim. Nothing recent though on this website to indicate what it's at right now. But.
Yeah, I think it's coming out of the sun's glow, and it hits perihelion here towards the end of this month. So Alistair's the person who does the What's Up for Astronomy magazine. And so when he's telling me to go take a look at something, and it might not have made it into the magazines or something as quick as maybe they would have liked, I gotta say I'm gonna go and try to take a peek at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice that it's an evening comet. It just for I think a lot of people, or at least for me, it's just easier to get out in the evening than to wake up earlier in the morning. So yep. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So that's cool. So I really didn't do that much. I had really hemmed and hawed about going out on Friday night. I went out for a short walk. There was still quite a bit of wind. And it wasn't supposed to drop. And even in the morning, there was some wind. And I don't know about setting up a telescope. And it's pretty muddy where I have to pull in out at my site. I just think it needs a few days. And anything around here is just going to be a mud city for the next 3 or 4 weeks anyway. But my site's drying out. There's a couple little drifts left. And I was even maybe debating going out there tonight, but I'm going to definitely go out in the next week and see how it's coming along. But I think, next new moon out there will be totally good. As you know, it's a hill covered in cactus, and cactus like to grow in soil that drains well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
the next new moon will be good timing for this 03 Pan stars as well. So that's all lining up pretty good for us.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take a week off there. Let's see. I received the Atlas of Deep Sky Splendors by Hans Verenberg, which is an older book first published in the late 60s. My edition was from the mid or late 90s, which is probably about the last time it was printed. This book was really popular with amateur astronomers. Did you ever see a copy of this Atlas of Deep Sky Splendors by Verenberg?
No, I've never. No, I haven't.
It's really interesting. In some ways good, in some ways not as good. So observing books are always really fun to get, and because there really isn't as many observing books being produced anymore, it's fun to go back and grab one of these older ones. I remember back. This was when I was first getting into astronomy. And this book was going out of publication then. I looked at it at a large bookstore and didn't purchase it because the price was fairly high, and I just wasn't really sure about it. Wasn't really sure how I would use it. And of course, now as time has gone by, I sort of become nostalgic for such things. But it's an interesting book because his whole take was that he would image, I think he was using emulsion film or whatever in the late 60s, but he imaged at the same scale for everything. So it was meant to give you a sort of a consistent representation of this. I think there's like I might get this wrong. I'm going to say it's like 360 odd objects, but it could be like 160 odd objects. 360 seems high. But anyway, it's around a couple hundred objects plus or minus. And then there's, of course, like there's center focused objects, and there's other ones in the field, but the text itself is around 225 pages long. It's interesting to go through and look at those. They're really excellent photographs. Like he took a lot of time and care to make them. And then throughout, this is kind of the part that's a bit idiosyncratic, is that typically, Shane, when you get an observing book, even if it's one like this, there's going to be those introductory chapters, right? They might have some essays on a few different things, right? You're familiar with this format? That's pretty common.
Yep.
So Verenberg didn't do that. What he did instead is he wrote these essays on they're interesting essays on like Bernard Schmidt and the camera, and of course he's using the Schmidt camera back in the 60s or whenever to take these photos. And then I wrote an essay on Messier. I think he wrote a Messier on Lacaille, wrote a an essay on satellite trails. And then I think there's maybe another essay that I'm forgetting, but he kind of spread them out throughout the book. And, you'll have a piece of the essay on one page and it will say, continued on page 214 or something. You have to flip ahead a bunch of pages to get to it, And so each one is like that, and they progress. So like I sat down over the course of a couple of evenings and I read all the essays. You kind of have to flip through the whole book to read like that kind of introductory material, which is kind of a bit strange. And then the other thing is, on the left page, he would have the descriptions and sort of the remainder of these essays. And then on the right page, he would have like a little finder, some of the basic details of the object, and then this great big image. All these images were approximately the same, plus or minus to a certain scale. But the descriptions are all jammed in the bottom left of the page, I think, to make room for those essays. So it's a little bit strange how it kind of compares to a modern text, but maybe it's just like those old layouts. So yeah, kind of a bit of an interesting thing. Let's see. I got the Cosmic Butterflies by Sun Kwok, which is a book he was a professor at the University of Calgary. I don't know if he still is or not. And what this is, it's a book on Planetary Nebula. And it's based on a bunch of Sky and Telescope articles that he had authored. I believe that's how it came about. And it's kind of like a coffee table book. And when that book came out, I really, really wanted to get it, but it was too expensive. I couldn't afford it at the time. And I bought this one for $5. It's an old library book. Both of them are old library books. But it's just like new. Both of them are pretty much just like new. And so it's kind of fun to flip through and read that stuff. And they're reasonable images, from a variety of different observatories, and some pretty good essays in there on planetary nebula and stellar evolution. So yeah, that was kind of neat. And the other thing that arrived, I bought the Web Society Digital Archive.
Oh, okay.
And
this is interesting.
It is super interesting. So something I hemmed and hawed over for a long time. And what this is the Web Society is it's an astronomical society, mostly for visual observers, though they do lots of CCD imaging as well, I guess. Some double star stuff. They have members all over the world. From Mark Bratton is a longtime member. I've known a few other people. I'm not a member. If you become a member, basically what you do is you get a copy of their quarterly report every 4 months, and then I think they have the Deep Sky Observer. Maybe they've combined the two now. I can't recall, but what you can do is they have a variety of publications you can purchase, and I purchased their archive from 2007 and earlier. So you have all these older articles in that. And it's really neat to kind of read through and see what's in there. One of the things I was looking for, I've been working on this list for Kemble, and I think I had mentioned that I was hoping to find one more object. And the type of object I was looking for was a planetary nebula. And so I was hoping to find maybe this list that he had referenced in an email to Alistair Ling that Alistair had forwarded to me. And this email had mentioned a list of 146 planetary nebulae that were in a copy of the 93 or 9, something like that version of the this quarterly report by the Web Society. Anyway, so I dug that up and I found it. That was kind of interesting. But then kind of as I flipped through, I kind of wanted to see like where this work had evolved. I actually found an article by Kemble about 2 planetary nebula, Jones 1 and Jones Embersum 1. And that latter one that I mentioned there is up in Lynx, which is at 53 degrees north latitude. So it met his criteria. So I was able to kind of finally flesh out that list of 50 objects I was trying to get together. So that was pretty exciting.
That is exciting. What is the cost of the Web Society archive to purchase?
Oh, yeah, I think it ended up costing me like $40 or something.
Oh, well, that's fine.
Canadian. Yeah, it's not too bad. Some of it's pretty dated. So the other reason why I wanted to get it, and kind of once I have a few reasons to get something, that's typically when I get it. So one of my favorite astronomy authors is Ken Glyn Jones. He wrote a book on the Messier objects back in the 60s or 70s or something. I didn't buy it. Randall, my friend, bought it for me and mailed it to me. And it's just such a beautiful book. And he wrote, much of what he wrote is in these early copies of the Webb Society. And he was just a phenomenal observer and really big supporter of visual observing in the world. He passed away a number of years ago. But anyway, I kind of wanted to have access to some of his early writings. And then as well, I want to see what was in there of Kemble's, not listed in the index, but actually in one of those older editions as well. Kemble had this article on these planetary nebula. So that was super exciting. So well worth getting it there. And then also, I'm interested in observing planetary nebula and just kind of having this nice, concise list that turns out they really didn't do that much with. I thought, that could be an interesting project for the future. I just always love finding projects and maybe not even necessarily finishing projects. Maybe my project is just finding projects. I don't know.
Fair enough.
So anyway, so that's kind of an exciting thing. So yeah, kind of doing that kind of stuff. We had some emails here. Let's see. Maybe I'll read the first one. You can read the second one. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So I had an email from Stan, who's in Cape Breton, which is a place near and dear to my heart, having grown up in Nova Scotia and living there most of my life before I moved out here. He says, "Hey guys, my name is Stan. I own the Two Rivers Observatory located in the Two Rivers Wildlife Park in Cape Breton, which for those that know Cape Breton, it's on the St. Peter side. And my observatory is open to the public from the long weekend in May to end of October, our regular camping season here as we are in a campground." He says, "I love the show. Just found them last week," and he's about 3/4 of the way through them. And he says that in a lot of the episodes, we refer to observing lists and objects to find. Is there anything online to find these lists that you mentioned? Do you have any show notes, or is he going to have to go through and start keeping a list? Yeah, he said, "P.S. I heard you mention Astral Planner a few times, and he was one of the original testers for the guy that made it."
Yeah, Paul Rodman. Yeah, I love Astral Planner. It's really good software.
You use it. I don't use it, so I was hoping you could comment on that.
Yeah, I don't use it anymore, unfortunately. And the reason is I've ditched traditional computers for tablets, and that's my new way of operating. However, when I used to have, I've had Windows laptops as well as Apple laptops. Astral Planner works for both platforms, and there might even be a Linux version of it. I can't remember. It's phenomenal. It's the best planning / logging software that I've ever used. Paul provides pretty much, I think, every catalog that's ever existed. And then the community sort of contributes, the community being the users, contributes like observing lists. So there's a number of lists that you can download that, link to the objects, right? So if you wanted, say, the finest NGCs, which is a RASC list, it's there. And then you download it, you save it, and then you can also log all of your observations of the finest NGC. So it has inventory of all of your gear. So it really makes for logging entry quite quick, quite easy. And then the other thing that it does, like most good planning programs will do, is if you just want nebulas, you can put in all of these parameters to build a customized observing list for what you want to look at based on your aperture or based on where you want to look in the sky. It's very powerful. It's very well designed. It's stable. There's nothing better out there if you're looking for like logging / planning software.
Sounds like some sort of commercial, like the Bassomatic 2000. We've got nebulas. We've got clusters. We've got globular clusters. We've got dark nebulas. We've got to move everything. We've got to get everything out of the sky. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. And I also mentioned to him that several of the lists, like you mentioned the finest NGC list and some of these other things, these are in the Observer's Handbook with the RASC. And it's one of the books that I am a contributing author of. So people can pick that up from the RASC. And since he's in Cape Breton and in Canada, and anybody can join as an unattached member. I'm an unattached member because I sort of contribute on the national side of things. You can join as a national member, and when you do join, you get a copy of this every year because it is updated, and then you get Sky News, which is the Canadian monthly magazine, as well as our what is a bi-monthly journal, or whenever it comes out. So yeah, you get quite a bit, and I thought he might benefit from having those things, particularly where he's running an observatory in Cape Breton here in Canada. So yeah, that's a neat spot over there. Now, that side that he's on, fun fact, most people don't know this, but that area gets hit by more hurricanes than any place else on the earth.
Oh, wow. I did not know.
Yeah, that place is the Hurricane Alley. Yeah. And typically they're just barely hurricanes when they hit, but that place has the distinction of having been hit by more hurricanes, I think basically of like category 1 than anywhere else, because typically that is the end path for most hurricanes and tropical storms and whatever. Maybe it's a combination of hurricanes and tropical storms, but yeah, it's a neat place. He's further down from Louisbourg, but Louisbourg's a pretty famous place in Nova Scotia, but it's on that side. My aunt and uncle lived up by there. I think Albert Bridge is a place up there where they lived. And so I'd gone up there a couple times and been to Louisbourg. And I went to Louisbourg one day. I've been there a few times. And it's often so foggy at Louisbourg that it's when you park and then you wait around, you take one of these like tour, they bus you out to it kind of thing. Like you can't drive right up to it. Like it's controlled access. And in the bus, when you're going on the bus, they have like a recording of like what you're seeing, because they have to drive at like 20 kilometers an hour. And it kind of tells you a bit of a story as you're coming along. And it actually says, if it was clear today, like in the pre-recording, it's so foggy there. It says, if you could see through the fog, and we were there and it was like 30 degrees. It was the nicest day they'd ever had there, I think. Anyway, so
it's funny. Just to add a little bit to that email too, as far as, do we have a list of objects that we mention on the show? Not really. We do have a website, actualastronomy.com. We do post some show notes there. So you may find some things that, not quite observing lists, but things to look at for the given month. So it is a little bit time sensitive.
Yeah.
But if you are looking for lists, if you go to like rasc.ca, or if you go to the Astronomy League website or the ALPO website, basically any astronomy club, if you go to their website, you're likely going to find a number of lists there, whether they're pertinent to that local club or something that's more well-known, like the Messier list, that type of stuff. Those can be other resources if you're looking for an observing project or list to work through.
Perfect. Do you want to read Sean's email?
I do, except just let me do this. I hit a button I wasn't supposed to. Okay, I'm back.
You should have saw the button Shane showed me at the start of this. We want to get into that.
So this says, hi guys, never miss an episode. Really enjoy the show. After only being in this hobby for about a year and a half and focusing primarily on astrophotography, I finally have an observing report. Just had first light with a new to me 6-inch Skywatcher Maksutov F12 and an EQ5 Pro Go-To mount. First night out with it was disappointing. The mount would only slew an RA and made a terrible sound, and the views at the eyepiece were not the views I expected to see based on the great reviews I read from cloudy nights. Was very worried. I purchased a couple of lemons. Clouds rolled in, so I decided to come up with a troubleshooting plan for the next clear night. Suspected the mount slew problem was a power issue, so I had a plan for that and took to cloudy nights to learn more about Macs. Some people said the beauty thing about Macs is that they don't require collimation, and others said that it wasn't necessarily true, so I researched on how to do a star test. Next clear night, I had different and better power pack, started a 3-star alignment, set it to slew to Aldebaran, It slewed perfectly and sounded great. When I centered on it, I put in a 4mm eyepiece to try this star test thing out. It looked great with concentric circles, and to my unaided eye, it seemed like it matched the picture of good optics. My conclusion was the poor views from the other night were due to either poor seeing or telescope acclimation. I carried on with the alignment, and when it was done, I used the guided tour feature to just to test out the performance of the mount using an Orion 40mm eyepiece, which made 45 times power. He said each target was bang on. Saw a bunch of open clusters like M44, 36, 37, 38, 45, and in brackets with M45 part of it. These were nice, but probably look really good at a shorter focal length. M42 was amazing. Then I slewed to M1. I had imaged this at 300mm, and it was almost a spec, so wasn't sure what to expect with this scope. I looked in the eyepiece and saw nothing, just stars. My skies here are pretty good in West Kelowna, Bortle 4, and M1 was opposite the light dome of the city. But I thought maybe there's too much light pollution. I knew it was there based on the mount performance, so I decided to try some tips I got from you guys. I sat with it a while using averted vision and giving the scope a bit of a jiggle and just tried to be patient. After a little bit, I thought I could maybe make something out, but I wasn't really sure. Slowly, an image faded in, and I was very sure I could see it and was surprised at how large it was. Taking quite a bit of the field of view, I didn't see any detail, just the shape of it. Very cool. And then I love the ending here. I love the feeling I get when I see the photos I take, but seeing this stuff with your own eye is such an incredible and different feeling. Keep up the good work. Mm-hmm. Cheers, Sean. So great email. With Max Sudovs, I've had a couple Macs in the past, 5-inch Macs, and certainly the acclimation is a big part of them. It does take some time. I would, depending on the temperature swing, I would say probably at least an hour you'd want to, have the telescope outside cooling down. And I love that ending of just, photos are great. I love looking at photos, but there is just such a different feeling when you're looking at the object in the eyepiece.
Yeah. Fresh photons.
There you go. Yeah. It was awesome.
The original article. Yeah. I like that as well. Just the thing I really liked about Sean's email is just like the working through of, getting a scope and kind of just working out like how it works and everything like that. And I think we've all been there, so can really connect with what he was saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got an email from Mike.
Our local friend Mike that we observe with an awful lot.
Yeah, so we'll read Mike's email. So this is fun. I didn't reply to him, so I was like, we're going to read it on the show. So he says, Chris Shane, Friday was a good night to do a binocular session. Yeah, I agree. I got up and did my binocular session in the morning. He said, I observed some beautiful asterisms. I wanted to see Orion before it sets, and did some observing from 9 till 10. I looked first at the sword of Orion, makes a good-sized asterism for his cannons, which are 15 by 50 binoculars, which have about a 4.5-degree field of view. And he saw many faint stars nearby in a large group of 10 to 12 stars. Yeah, there actually is a large group there. I forget the name of it. It's on my list of things to try to see this winter. I'm going to have to send that to him. I'm going to have to dig it up. Anyway, Mike goes on to say, while focusing on the fainter stars, the nebula starts to take shape. No color, of course, as there's too much light pollution from his home in the middle of the city. The great nebula of Orion was now oriented to display symmetrical loops emanating from the trapezium. The trapezium is a small grouping of stars, basically a star collection that's being birthed right at the middle of the Orion Nebula. So that's what he's looking at there, just for people listening. Let's see. Next, I observed some of Orion's bright stars from the fields around them. He observed Rigel as blue-white, and it's a good test if you're looking for double stars. And with a small telescope, if you can split Rigel's much fainter companion, which is less than 10 arc seconds away, you may be able to see the fainter star at, I think it's 11 degrees or 11 arc seconds from Sirius. Yeah. So just going back, I think Shane, you mentioned this, doing that comparison between Rigel as a good starting position to split before trying to split Sirius. So they're about comparable, but of course Sirius is lower down, so a little bit more challenging for us. Mike goes on to say near Bellatrix deletes 17, a triangle of triangles, so a little asterism there. Misa and Colander 69 to me looks like a safety pin on a punk rocker. So I hadn't thought about that before, but
that's a great description.
Yeah. So Colander 69 is the head of Orion. And it's this group of sort of 3-ish bright stars. And then there's some fainter stars in and around it. And that head of Orion was cataloged as a misty spot by some of the earlier astronomers, like Al-Sufi documented this in 964 AD in his book of fixed stars. And I think it was documented maybe even as early as Ptolemy. Mike goes on to say, due south of the head of Hydra is another big asterism in a 7-degree field. Oh, and Mike also said Colander 70, which is the Orion belt of stars. He was looking at the curving snake of stars, that kind of twists and turns in and amongst those. Pretty cool. Higher in the sky, M35 near Colander 89 in the foot of Gemini. That's a super rich area. Love that region of the sky. The jellyfish nebula is up there as well. Over to Riga and the Leaping Minnow, which is Malat 31, and Stock 8, which he sees as another little fish. I hadn't heard of Stock 8 being called a little fish before. Do you?
No, I haven't. I'm curious to have another look of it now, actually.
Yeah. Then he goes on to talk about clusters M38, M36, and M37 are still pretty high up and easy to see some details in his 15 by 50s. Yeah, those are beautiful binoculars. Mike goes on to say, I was surprised how these were and kept coming back for another look. Yeah, those will look pretty good in those binoculars. Last on, he went to the Pleiades to finish the session, picked up the tripod and get out of the cold night air. Conditions were good at about 0 degrees Celsius, little wind and clear. So he's in the center of the city. I'm kind of on the eastern edge. Shane is on the western edge. Mike is almost exactly between us. So I had too much wind, I think, really, to be out for too long. And Mike, I think Mike was sort of in the Goldilocks zone there. And I've even noticed, because Snuns have dropped over to his house and just at different times of the year, I've been surprised. I think I mentioned this as well. I picked something up or dropped something off to you around this time last year. And I was shocked that I think it was 5 or 6 degrees warmer at your house than it was at mine one day.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting, but what are we, probably about 10 or 15 kilometers apart as the crow flies? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, Mike goes on to say, also saw a number of satellites, including a very big bright one overhead heading north and passing close to Beta Auriga. And that's the only observing I've done since the past 2 weeks when I did a lunar session, a day past full. He said a favorite is the Messier twin craters that are well seen at that time. Still listening to all the podcasts. I hear my name come up sometimes, which is okay. I hope it's okay. Looking forward to the next time we meet and stay at mostly at the grasslands. Wishing all the best, Mike. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's really fun to get an email from him. Yeah, hopefully it's okay, because kind of if we're chatting with people that are observing, that goes into the podcast, and because Mike is a frequent observing companion of ours, that means that he's in this on a fairly regular basis. So sorry about that. So yeah, good stuff. All right. Anything to add, Shane? No, that's it, Chris.
All right. Well, thanks, Shane. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Be sure to subscribe in your podcatching software. And we're also on Patreon. Always happy to take Patreon donations to help support the show. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.